Hello, everyone, and welcome to another elite episode of the Get Authentic with Marcus show. I'm your host, Marcus Ogden. Today's episode, we're joined by Mr. Gary Laney. But before we bring up Gary to the stage, I want to thank one of our amazing sponsors. We want to thank Money Ripples, owned by Mr. Chris Miles. Money Ripples helps you create a financial base and legacy to leave for your loved ones so they can live the life that you want them to live and that they deserve. We thank Money Ripples and Chris Miles for sponsoring this episode. Now, here he is. Gary, how you doing today, Gary?
Marcus, I'm outstanding. How are you today? It's great to see you.
Good to see you as well, my friend. You're out doing your thing and you're taking care of business. Love seeing that. We connected, Gary, a while back on LinkedIn. I've used your content in my speeches, through your book, Strategic Leadership, but you've got some other things happening right now. But before that, right, Gary, you know the first question. What does authentic mean to Gary Laney?
You've asked me this question before, so I'm going to change it up a little bit. To me, it's authentic as being the real you. It's being genuine. And it's really being who people know you are, not trying to pretend, not putting this, I call it superficial makeup on, this personality makeup. So the people can, get a sense of maybe what you think you want to be, but hey, let's just be genuine. There's plenty of that to share, and why pretend? So I think that's pretty good to start.
I love it, Gary. Gary, since you've been on before, and give us a quick little recap about who you are, where you're from, and then of course you have some great new projects that are ready to come out, or maybe have already come out. Share with our audience like what's going on new in Gary Laney's world.
Hey, well, I appreciate that. I'm the nutshell version of me is I grew up in a family business. I was engineered as a young kid to be an entrepreneur someday. My father, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, all entrepreneurs. I did get into corporate initially for 25 years and kind of made my mark there. But I knew that someday that I would get into entrepreneurship. And I did that with my father before he died. I bought his last business. Then I spent the last 20 years that we're talking right now, from 2004 to 2024, being a kind of a serial entrepreneur. I've bought and sold 12 businesses. I've had a great time doing it. The last few years, I've been writing books, trying to get on paper into a book, things that I believe in, things that have been proven, things I've taught to other people. Kind of trying to create my own little legacy, which is something I teach you should do. Nothing wrong with that. There's nothing, you shouldn't ever be ashamed with the interest. It's not an ego trip. It's about laying the groundwork and sharing with people the things that you've learned in your life so you can pass it on. It's about giving back. It's nothing to do with your ego. So that's what I've been doing for the last little while. Written 2 books, two bestsellers. Been a lot of fun. Doing a lot of speaking. Project. So jump into a couple of projects or.
Oh yes, please.
Yeah. Okay, so my first book was called The Power of Strategic Influence. Stephen Covey was a mentor. 7 Habits was my life, teaching for 35 years. And then I knew, over that time, you're in business, you learn how to extend, how to extrapolate, how to expand the concepts that you've been taught so that in real life, they're usable. And so I've managed a couple of thousand salespeople, support people, professional service people. I've taught thousands of entrepreneurs. And so during that process, I've learned concepts, which I call models, that help you take the concepts that I initially learned from Stephen Covey and other great people, Zig Ziglar. Because of the Olympics, I was thinking of a guy named Bob Richards, who came and spoke to my salespeople years and years ago. He was a dynamic, Olympic athlete, the first to ever win 2 gold medals for the U.S. And he was a wonderful pole vaulter. I mean, he just go for the gold. This guy just, helped me mentally, just from some initial contact with him, get a mindset that helped me know, what do I really want? What do I really want to go for? And this legacy thing I'm talking about is something everybody should be thinking about before they get too far in their life, so they can decide what that should be, to have some input on it and what it looks like. So that was the first book about influence, strategic influence, because it's about long term. It's about relationships. My second book, which is called it's called Become a Super Leader, almost jumped into my first book again. Um, and I'll just give you a nutshell version of what that means. Become a super leader means that I have more potential than I'm giving myself credit for. I have more potential than I've ever really thought was possible. And the way you know you have potential is because you keep doing better at things. In sports, you know this so well. Personal bests are huge, huge, huge. How do we continue to extend and develop ourselves and do better than we've done in the past? Doesn't it amaze you in the Olympics that every 4 years it comes around, they beat world records every time? How do you keep doing that? How's it
Mhm.
possible?
Mhm.
Because we don't know our limits, because there are no limits. And so they will continue to happen forever. It's never going to end. On a personal basis, you should take the time to decide what those personal bests look like. Why do they matter to you? Pick the ones that matter to you in your life, your livelihood, in your career, in your family. And those are the ones you should be focusing on to create what I call a mastery system, a mastery of certain elements, or I call competitive competencies, to help you become the person that you really want to become. Decide it early on. Don't wait too long. In my book, I talk about an amazing man named Benjamin Franklin, who at the age of just 20 years old, and by the way, he lived to be 84 in a time when people are living to be 30 something. And because of his decisions early on, he made sure that health was part of his perspective of where he wanted to become, how he wanted to master certain what he called virtues, and became an amazing person. He'll even tell you at the end of his life he'd never perfected himself. Very humble guy in that regard, um, because he knew that he had a lot of behavioral issues early on
Mm.
and
Mm.
decided that he wanted to tackle those. He wanted to overcome them, that he wanted to master them. And though he says he never mastered them, never perfected them, he was a much happier person and a better person because he tried to do it. I mean, that's the end all be all and the message in my book, I think.
You know, Gary, I absolutely love the entire segment, but I love the last part around Benjamin Franklin, right? I knew that he lived to be older, but I didn't know the age. And back in those times in the 1700s, that is almost unheard of. But again,
Absolutely.
it's about being the super leader that understands that you can always do more and be more. And that's my question, right, Gary? Talk about again. Don't give it away. 'Cause I want people to buy your book, but and again, that's I've been almost done with it. And what you talk about around understanding that there is no limits to what you can achieve, right? But it has to start with believing in yourself. What would you say, Gary, is going to be, along with believing in yourself, of course, what is a great trait that you've seen from people like Benjamin Franklin to Dr. Stephen Covey to Bob Richards, all these amazing super leaders, right? What's a trait that they have in common that you can share with our audience based off your research?
Well, so thanks for that research comment. I've spent 3 years talking to a lot of people, and most of them are great leaders. So leaders from management, managerial, supervisory, all the way up to CEOs of great companies, some Fortune 500 companies like Nando Cesarone, who's the president of UPS, who I interviewed and featured in my new book. But during those interviews and surveys to over 1,000 business people, business leaders, I asked one of the simple questions I asked is, what does it take to become a great leader? What are the characteristics do you think you're a leader? What do you think characteristics are important to help you develop the characteristics that would make you the better person? And I call them competencies. And I like to add the word competitive because if you master, even become proficient in some competency, you're more competitive. So I think
Mm.
the one that if I had to choose one, it would be integrity. Integrity was one of the top 13 out of the 40 that I narrowed hundreds of competencies down to. You just can't go wrong with integrity. A person with integrity, and you expect someone that you want to trust, and you ultimately, hopefully, can trust to have integrity, which means you do what you say you're going to do. I mean, that's the easiest explanation of integrity. If I say I'm going to do something, you can count on it. It's just in the works. It's not going to be a problem. If someone doesn't have integrity, then you're going to question everything all the time. Kind of wonder, if they say something, if they start to do something, will they finish it? if they get me involved in something, if they have the integrity to think that it's beneficial to me, not just for them. So I think integrity, big deal. It was important to Benjamin Franklin, to all these people I've interviewed. I've interviewed 20 great leaders over the last 3 years, and I've had a chance to talk to amazing thought leaders like yourself that had a background where they came with great challenges and overcame them and became wonderful people. And I think challenges is also a makeup of a great leader. So I think integrity would be my choice.
I love that. And Gary, integrity is all about, like you said, doing what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to do it. And that's huge. It is. And I have two questions. First one, I'm going to go to my original round, which is Aristotle, right? I heard you talk about, if people question your integrity, it's going to be a long day. And Aristotle was hired by King Philip II to coach his son, Alexander the Great. And there were five principles that he taught to Alexander to get his men to follow him, to be successful, be a great leader, however you want to put it, right? The number one thing Aristotle taught to Alexander about was character. He said, or integrity. If people question that, he said, if your men ever think that you're here for them, for you, and not the great of Greece, excuse me, if they think it's all about Alexander and not for the good of Greece, if things happen or things get tough in battle, they will run away. My question is, Gary, going to your book and what you talk about all these great leaders, if somebody is, I won't say struggle with integrity, but like they're good people, but they don't know how to express that. They don't know how to show it in a more, in a better light. What would Gary Laney say that you need to do if you have the right intentions, right, Gary, with poor execution? What would you say, based off your research and all of your data that you gather, people can do to become more execution oriented in showing integrity?
Well, I think what you have to so you summed it up. I mean, character is the goal. We all want to be known for what I'm going to call making good on your positive intentions. Not just intentions, it's positive intentions. We want a positive result, and that reflects on us. And Benjamin Franklin literally decided that he wanted to perfect his character. Okay, that's what he had, behavioral issues, but his goal was, I want to become a person with positive character that people can talk positively about, and also that he can influence others to do the same, by the way. So I mean, he was a huge influencer. So he prescribed at 20 years old, Marcus, 13 virtues that he felt like he was challenged in. And one of the ones that I thought was most admirable was humility, because he had a reputation for liking to talk about himself. He loved what he was accomplishing, rightfully so. He was an inventor. He was a politician. He was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence. I mean, he just goes on and on and on. He was an amazing publisher, writer, etc. And so he saw that some of the things he was doing, displaying, he was getting bad feedback apparently from people around him. And he says, okay, what are the 13 things? And I'll explain why 13. What's the list of things I need to do to develop my character? And integrity was there, humility was there, all these things that as humans we're challenged with. Eating too much, pursuing the wrong with the wrong intentions, the opposite sex. I mean, so many things that he was concerned that he would be judged for if he didn't perfect his character. So I think when it comes down to it, each of us have to have that very serious meeting with ourselves. You can ask for input. It's not a bad way to start. Ask others, what do you think of me? What do you think my challenges are? And be honest with me. You know me, we're friends. My character, what are my flaws? What are my challenges? So I think that's a good place to start. But then you have to get yourself together somewhere and spend time and say, what do I really need to work on at the end of my life? Here's the question. What do I want to be known for? What do I want people to think about me at the end of my life? What's the legacy I'm trying to create? And that all results in something called character. I really think that's the formula.
My good friend, asking people that you know that have your best intentions, what can I do better? And one thing that I have had to constantly work on is patience, constantly, because at the end of the day, we all want something, but it's not about wanting it in our time. We have to let people do it in their time. And so over the years, probably like, especially the last two since my divorce, I've gotten much better at that, but I'm also in therapy and I talk to my therapist about it once a week. How can I get better at this? And that's something that I love hearing about Benjamin Franklin because, again, it shows that he was aware and wanted to compete with himself, be the best version of himself. And that's my next question, Gary. You remind me a lot of my coach, Brad Mitchell, who is the founder of NAPSA, National Athletic Professional Success Academy. He was hired by the NFL Retired Players Association in March of 2018 to work with us at Penn State for a 5-day intensive program. There were 7 of us. The first day, we talked about 6 business value drivers. And interestingly enough, one is called situational awareness and analysis. But what I heard you say, right, Gary, is that as you get better as a leader, perfect yourself, keep moving, you got to compete, you got to get in the game. And one of the sub points of situational awareness and analysis, Gary, is competitive market analysis. Brad taught us, yes, do what you do. Don't focus on it wholeheartedly about others, but know what's going on around you. Compete against yourself, compete against others, analyze what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong. My question is, right, Gary, for you and what you do through your book, Super Leaders, how do you help people become better at competing and understanding in the marketplace? To be the best, you got to go out there and you got to do the best.
Well, it's a great question. So, in my 20s, I'm not Benjamin Franklin, but likewise, in my 20s, I became a sales manager. And after uh, winning, top sales award, and so they invited me to come back as a manager. So out of 125 salespeople, I was number one. I had a lot I thought I could teach, but I hadn't really thought about that until they advanced me to what they called the district manager. And all of a sudden, I had the right responsibility of 5 to 7 people that I'd be responsible for. And how do I help them develop themselves and even shadow me? So shadowing to me is a big factor. How do you help someone learn something? Let them shadow someone in a way that doesn't impede their success or progress, but where they can observe and see what's going on. So here's what I do. So I say, okay, what are the things you need to improve on? Now, I was talking about as a salesperson, a salesperson has to learn how to approach people, how to be prepared, how to give a good presentation, how to do pre-close, how to do a good close, how to do post-close, how to take that positive experience, turn it into another sell with leads and referrals. I mean, it's a whole process. I mean, that sales process, Salesforce.com will be the first to tell you is huge. They used to be my competitor. I know I've met Mark Benioff and I used to compete against him. But back to it. So how do I learn the things that are important for me? Okay, well, you can ask people what you need to improve on, but another angle of this is to say, who are the people that I admire? Who are the leaders that I admire and why? That's the question. Why? What are the characteristics that they display that I relate to that I think I could acquire like them? So I have to stop for a second and explain what 13 is why 13 is so magical. Benjamin Franklin wanted a system that was perpetual. Why perpetual? Because you cannot develop yourself, improve yourself, become the better version of yourself in a week. I think the week's the right time frame that you talked about to work on it once, 1 week at a time, but you can't do it all in 1 week. You can start it, you can get an impression, you can start to develop a habit in 1 week, but I've even, I don't know what you think, but how long does it take for a person to develop a habit? How many days?
Oh, good Lord. I think it's like 21 or 28, like 30 to 21, 28 days, something like that. It becomes a habit, something like that.
Yeah, so I grew up thinking it was 21 days. And the
Hmm.
reason that concept, by the way, came from a guy named Maxwell Maltz, who wrote a book, Psycho-Cybernetics. He was a plastic surgeon. And here's the remarkable part. You go to a plastic surgeon because you have defects, physical defects.
Hmm. Hmm.
And a good physical plastic surgeon can repair those to some degree that makes you much improved. He said that the amazing part, you would kind of expect a person, after they take off the bandages and they look in the mirror and they no longer have this defect, to immediately gain confidence, to immediately be able to walk out and feel like they're part of the world and have no, problem with self-image. He said that didn't happen. He said they still saw themselves as that person. They couldn't accept it. So it took 21 days with some help to get to a point where they could accept their new image. But that's not the habit we're talking about. Habits, this 21-day thing has been debunked. He says habits now take months, sometimes years of working at something before it becomes in you, part of you, automatic, that you don't have to think about it anymore. That doesn't happen in 21 days. 21 days is a good start. It's an initial period to help you understand what you're capable of, I think, and to accept it, like the people with the plastic surgery. But it takes much longer than that. So Benjamin Franklin told himself, how do I create a perpetual system? And I've been teaching this, using this system, because I've been studying Benjamin Franklin since I was 21 years old.
Hmm.
And the people I first had I was responsible for, I had to have a system, and I found out about his system at age 21. This is 1979.
Hmm.
Okay, so a long time ago.
Hmm.
But I asked them, think of the leaders, think of the salespeople, think of the people, any people that you admire, and write down the characteristics that make you want to follow them, that you think are important to you. And so Benjamin Franklin recommends 13. Let me tell you why. How many weeks in a year are there?
52.
52. How many times is 13 going to 52?
4.
Exactly. Exactly 4 times. Not partially, not, you know, almost. It's 4% exactly. So you pick 13 things and write them down. And I'm going to start with number one. I'm going to focus on that mindset wise. I have to do a lot of things in life. And so I can't just focus on one thing, but I can have a mindset of one thing for the entire week. At the end of week one, I go to number two on my list. There's 13 I got to get to. When I get to the 13 and I've spent a week on that, guess what happens? I start the whole process over. I've only done one cycle. By the end of one full year, 52 weeks, I've gone through 4 cycles. And that's a really good start because I was able to spend one full week on each of those 13 items four different times.
Mm.
Benjamin Franklin did this over a lifetime. One of the most amazing polymaths of our time. Polymath is someone that has many sides to themselves, many talents that they haven't perfected, but they've worked at, that they've become proficient at. He was an amazing polymath. So over a lifetime, he worked at them, every week. It was perpetual, never had to stop. It wasn't a New Year's resolution that in 3 weeks he stopped working on. Most people stop after the first month of a resolution. The majority stop at 6 months, and so few ever make it to year one. He made it to year 64.
Mm.
Started when he was 20, lived to be 84. So he did that 64 times. Imagine at the end of his life how amazing he was, and he was. But he said to himself and everybody, even with all that, I wasn't perfect. I still had a lot of deficiencies, but I was a much happier man and more successful because I tried it, because I did it, and I followed through. So I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's how you do it. And that's how I've done it with my salespeople, with the people I've taught over the years, and the entrepreneurs that I've advised. And it takes time, and you never stop. Now, one thing I should just throw in there, the 13 list he started with didn't maintain exactly over those 64 years. Every 2 or 3 years, he'd swap something out, or two or three things. There's nothing wrong with that. You move on, you acquire skills, you want to work on something else. But 13 is magical, and it's perpetual, and it's huge. In my book, I have a whole system laid out, how to develop your system, your plan, and then a measurement tool that helps you see how you're doing on a week to week, month to month, and yearly basis. So I think that's the critical part of this new book, is
Well,
really proven.
This is awesome. Phenomenal interview, Gary. Let's close out with that. How can people buy your book? They want to book you for a keynote. Where can our audience get in touch with the awesome Gary Laney?
Thanks for that plug. So I'm doing seminars. So one thing you could do is I have something called the Influential Leadership Mastery Program. I've turned it into a symposium. I've done two of those so far, one online, one in person at the University of South Carolina at Darla Moore School of Business. And I'm proceeding to do those with other universities. So if you're in the university and you want to have this mastery symposium, and I bring in great leaders to do it. I mean, I would love to have you come and participate at one of these symposiums. So that's
Absolutely.
number one. Number two, my book is on Amazon. You can probably get it from any bookstore. You can also get on my website, garyclaney.com, and I'm happy to send you a signed copy. So you can buy it online, and I can send you a signed copy. By the way, both of the books I have, Power of Strategic Influence and Become a Super Leader, they are entrenched. The second book is a development of Success Factor 8 in my first book. And so they're really meant to be read together. Read my first book, buy the second book, then it has a system for how you can do what you need to do. But I'm happy to consult, to speak. I do that regularly. Happy to get involved on an advisory basis. I'm advising 2 small startups right now, and excited about what I'm doing. And at that point in my life where I just want to give back and help other people, help other companies, especially startups.
I love it. Ladies and gentlemen, I've read both books. Amazing. It's been really awesome to see Gary, what he's done to help others. Reach out to him for a workshop, a keynote. His books, excuse me, are awesome. Go to Amazon. He will definitely send you a signed copy if you buy it through that. Go to his website, find out more information. Just all around awesome, awesome guy. And again, we want to thank our sponsor of this episode, Money Ripples, over Mr. Chris Miles. We want to thank our mindset coach partner, Ms. Colleen Greco, who helps people overcome challenges. And the authentic tip of this great interview, as Gary said, make something a habit. 13 is the magical number, which makes sense. I've been running now, Gary, lost about 30 pounds. I'm about close to 7 months in. It's 2 days on, 1 off, sometimes 3 days on, 1 off.
Wow.
And because it's become a habit, I do it without even thinking anymore. I don't think about it. It's up, boom, my workout's done, my run done. It's now part of my life. It's second nature. When you get to the point in life where you want to do something that's second nature, keep going, because like you said, it's an evolutionary process. It never, ever stops. Never give up. Just keep going. Keep getting better. Spend your life like Benjamin Franklin did for 64 years, trying to get better. And again, you're never going to be perfect, but you'll be the best version of yourself that you can be. Again, my name is Marcus Ogden. I'm the host of the Get Authentic with Marcus show. Thanks for tuning in. Have a fantastic day.
And clear. Great show.